So listen to this. There's this really interesting article that was written by Ted Joya from The Atlantic that was highlighting key factors on why old music is actually killing new music. So listen to this statistic. Old songs now represent 70% of the US music market. A report from MRC Data, music analytics firm, claims that 70% of music consumption in 2021 was of music that was released 18 months ago or earlier. Old music classifies as anything that dropped 18 months ago. The 200 most popular tracks now regularly account for less than 5% of total streams. So today we're going to be going through some different key factors in this. Why is this happening? Then going into, what we think is actually going on with it. And then what does the actual future hold for this whole situation? Because this is very interesting and it's a bit more complex than this. But what's your take on this? As a music fan, what do you see behind this and how do you feel about this consumption?
Well, it's really interesting just because the whole music industry thrives off of new releases and promoting new releases, but there's been this new trend over time where a lot of these labels are actually spending more capital into old back catalogs of artists that are in their 70s or 80s that have passed away, like Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, Michael Jackson, and others, rather than actually investing money into launching new artists. And I find that pretty fascinating because it does make sense in a way, because if you think about it this way, newer artists aren't necessarily sure bets because a lot of them will have I would say mounting success after one album cycle. For example, take Roddy Ricch with Please Excuse Me for Being Antisocial, and then from one album cycle to the next, there's a bit of that question mark. Will they be able to catch that steam once again? And we saw in Roddy Ricch's instances that on his first album, he had a diamond song, multiple platinum songs, and it was one of the biggest albums released in 2019. But his second album kind of didn't reach those same heights. So I feel like record labels are starting to realize, let me not take a gamble. Let me go with the classics and invest in having the publishing rights for an album, for example, like Michael Jackson's Thriller, because between me and you, we know that a project like that is going to be bumped 20, 30, 40 years from now. So it's kind of a safer bet for these labels, I would say.
Not only that, but there's also a very interesting component to this, and it's that these physical copies that are being sold right now is right through vinyl, and this is a music format that has been in the industry for 70 plus years, and now it's actually making a major comeback. And I also feel as if people are sort of, from a consumption standpoint, people are starting to see that old music is superior, and I think that you could see it because it laid down the whole foundation for what it is right now. So I mean, even if you look at older catalogs, like you were mentioning Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen sold his catalog for $500 million, and that was massive because our rappers selling those types of catalogs like that. And how is this going to affect hip-hop? Because another question I have is, now if you really look at the market, apparently according to this report, according to MRC, hip-hop and R&B account for 1/3 of the total streams in the industry right now. Am I correct on that, right?
Yeah, in the last year, 30% of the music consumed as a total was hip-hop or R&B.
So how does that make sense in our field now? Like, do you think that it's maybe a genre shift, or do you think that, maybe people are just going back to the classics? Because we had broken down, hip-hop before, Is Trap Dying, which you guys could go watch. It was an interesting conversation and a bunch of different things going into this. But what do you think is the main factor for this? Do you think people are hungry for the old music, and what's leading to this statistic?
Yeah, because people have had more time. Like us as listeners, we've had time to appreciate these albums and these catalogs that have been out for so many years. And they're always going to be there for us to rediscover. But talking about new releases, I just feel like nowadays these new releases peak very early and don't have the legs to continue garnering steam as time goes on. And it's kind of part of this whole fast food culture of consumption in hip-hop right now, where an album is being bumped heavy for the first couple of weeks and then it slides off of the charts. People aren't really listening to it that much because the music's being released on a more frequent basis. Maybe there's a bit less quality control. But speaking on hip-hop, I found a really interesting fact on Hits Double Daily, where they actually go through how much the top 50 albums have sold during particular weeks. And on the week of February 4th, there's something that really caught my eye, okay?
All right, let's hear this.
The number 34 most sold album was actually Kanye West's Donda, which came out 5 months ago, and it sold 15.4 thousand copies. The album that sold just a bit underneath it, at number 35, I believe, was Kendrick Lamar's Good Kid, Mad City, which sold 15.3 thousand copies in that week, meaning that Donda just sold 100 copies more, and Good Kid, Mad City came out 10 years ago. Donda just came out 5 months ago, and it's just crazy to see that people are gravitating towards a lot of these older projects. And even if you look at the Billboard 200 chart, the albums that are the most popular right now in the States, a big chunk of them, to be exact, right now, on the latest Billboard 200 chart, 88 are hip-hop albums, 58 of those are old albums, including 2014 Forest Hills Drive, 2001 More Life by Drake, and only 30 of those albums are new that came out 18 months ago or after. So it's interesting to see that people are gravitating more towards these older albums and catalogs, man.
Do you think it's because it's a reference point for them and they don't feel as if maybe the content is as strong enough? Because, listen, in the case of Donda, the GKMC, that's interesting because GKMC was released like literally 10 years ago and Donda was 5 months ago, but we're not talking about any regular album when it comes to Donda. This was one of the hottest releases of last year. This album put up 6,000 copies first week of release, like something around that mark. And
Yeah.
GKMC had done less first week when it had released, but now we could see that on a weekly basis, it's keeping up with Donda.
You know what's funny though?
Yeah.
Since Donda's come out, I've listened to Good Kid, Mad City more than I have Donda. I'll be totally honest with you.
And I think that's actually the case for a lot of people here, especially within the comments. Let me know if you guys agree with this, all right? Do you guys feel like you're going back to older catalogs more? In my case, I am. So example, I'll take it to Drake, all right? I barely revisit Certified Lover Boy. I'll go through a couple of tracks. I'll go through my standouts. I'll give the type of playlist feel, but I'm more on More Life.
Yeah.
I'm more on Take Care. I'm more on Nothing Was the Same. I'll go towards even views. I rarely see myself going towards newer material. So do you think it's the quality control thing, or do you think it's that we've gotten so much material from our favorite artists that, okay, we'll just go back to our favorites and then end it there?
Yeah, I mean, look, honestly, I don't really feel necessarily like old music is killing new music, just because if you really think about it, this whole, I would say, study is focused around old albums being classified as projects that came out a year and a half ago or earlier. So, like, do we really consider 2017, 2019 as old music? Because I necessarily don't, you know what I mean? And think about how much more music has come out 2019 and before compared to how much albums we have released in, let's say, 2020 and up. So it kind of makes sense that there are more old albums in rotation because of the quantity of how much there are. But at the same time, yeah, I do feel like a lot of people just aren't really gravitating towards these new releases as much as they are the older catalogs. And yeah, let's get into that, man. Like, do you feel like on a quality level that old music is superior? And do you feel like there's maybe a decline in the overall quality in hip hop?
Absolutely, and I think it comes from a music fan standpoint. Like, you know, we're the ones that are listening to the music in like our chairs. You know, we're here, we're experiencing this. Like, you know, the record labels are feeding us, the customers, this product. And I think that when you look at it from a pure product standpoint, when you're receiving the art, yes, there is a decline. There's a decline in the composition, if there's anything at that point. There's a decline in the writing. There's a decline in the way that these projects are being structured, the way that they're being released. Like, and it's no offense to anyone. You know, everyone has their way of releasing music, and that will stay consistent. But you definitely do notice the key declines. And we've talked about it on several occasions, how artists will release their strongest material at the beginning of their discographies. And as time goes on, you could start to see how the pen game gets a bit less sharp, how certain things in albums are a bit less structured, and how things just feel like a looser feel. So do you think it's also a thing of like artists looking at music fans like us, all right, and being like, you know, I got my name. I've delivered them classics. I've given them all the material they want. Let me just throw them a project that I've put effort into, and we'll see how it sticks with them. But they're not necessarily considering the quality control factor.
Yeah, 100%. And it's also, I think, the fact that streams have a big part to play in this, because to garner the most streams possible on a release, it's beneficial to have 16, 17, 20 song track lists. And that kind of hurts the quality too, which we've spoken about so many times. But I thought it was also interesting to go back and compare the biggest hits of 20 years ago in hip hop compared to the biggest hits of today. So I kind of compiled a list of 5 entries on the Billboard Hot 100 chart from 2002. I'll read them out. Number 6 on the week of August 5th, 2002, we had Without Me by Eminem. We had Oh Boy by Cameron. We had What's Love by Fat Joe and Ashanti, Move Bitch by Ludacris, and Grinding by Clips. Now, if we look at the most recent Billboard Hot 100 chart in 2022, we have songs like Pushin' P, we have Industry Baby by Lil Nas X and Jack Harlow, Knife Talk by Drake featuring 21 Savage and Project Pat, Rumors by Gucci Mane and Lil Durk, Who Want Smoke by Nardo Wick featuring 21 Savage, Lil Durk, and G Herbo. And to me, I feel like the major takeaway when I'm looking at the types of hits that were coming out 20 years ago versus right now is that those hits that came out in 2002, they all have this stark contrast in sound. They all sound very different from one another. And when I'm looking at these more recent hits, they all kind of follow more of a similar formula. And I feel like that's kind of a trend that's been happening right now, is that a lot of artists are trying to please the consumer based on what's already been successful instead of trying to innovate. It feel like it's now about fitting in rather than standing out as an artist. And that's an issue to me. So how do you feel about that? Because obviously there's still diversity within different acts, but in terms of the mainstream side of things, do you feel like a lot of artists are less original nowadays?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Come on, man. That's no question. I think the artists know it themselves. I mean, I almost think that, these new hits almost feel as if it's like little mini drop shipping websites. Like, it's kind of like people have their formula, people have like their little thing, and here, go, boom, make me my money, run it up for me. And that's no problem. I mean, listen, you can never question the way a man puts bread on the table. But I mean, at the end of the day, there has to be a question about quality, and that question is being answered right now. So I think also what was happening back then is there was so much room to be able to strive. There was so much area and turf to be able to tread, and now it seems like the competition is getting more fierce. But what I'm fearing is that if these record labels are really banking in on a lot of newer catalogs, what is the opportunity really for these newer artists? Like, are we going to see a lot more independent acts come through? Because, example, someone like Saba just released Few Good Things, and it's charting globally. It's doing fantastic things, and he released that independently. So do you think that more artists have to kind of beat the curb and really have to, go full forward with their own marketing plans, with their own stuff, to be able to really have this original music and content be heard? Because I still think that there's quality out there. That goes without being said. There's underground acts right now that are releasing great projects. So what's your take on that? And do you ever see that happening?
Yeah, I definitely see a lot of artists shifting towards that independent route, because why not? I mean, with all the resources we have now with social media marketing and so many ways for the consumer to find your music, do you really need that extra backing from a label that probably doesn't have your best interests in mind? So,
in certain instances, I think you do, because there's certain types of deals, like example, like, certain things to push your music,
distribution deals,
that are, in the favor of the artist. But even looking at the hunger for nostalgia now, this is a big thing that we're seeing that's prominent in the industry. So, example, you look at Silk Sonic, you look at The Weeknd. These guys are going back to old sounds that were prominent within the 70s and 80s, and they're putting their new twists with a modern sort of feel to it. So do you think artists are starting to beat the curb like that too now?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think in terms of like every art form, if you think about it, film, if it's music, whatever it is, there's always that hunger for nostalgia. There's always that comfort from revisiting old sounds. And listen, like The Weeknd did with After Hours or with Dawn FM, he kind of took that, 80s retro feel and made it sound new again. So if you can reinvent an older sound and flip it on its head, I'm all for that. But I feel like at the end of the day, I want music that's going to be iconic for its own time. I want the music of this era 50 years from now to be distinguished for having its own sound that will innovate and inspire the next batch of artists. So I am fucking with Dawn FM. I love An Evening with Silk Sonic, but I'm still here for that innovation. You know what I mean? And we're seeing it in hip hop too, for example. If you look at Griselda and the movement that they've been about, like they've been trying to recapture that feeling of that 90s golden age, East Coast hip hop, and fans are loving it. People are reminiscing. They're getting that Wu-Tang feel again, and fans will always have a place in their listening, I think, for that nostalgia. But I think it's time, we're at a time right now where, especially for mainstream acts who really want to break out and have these hit singles, there is a formula to these songs. For example, auto-tuned vocals is a big thing. Trying to create a song that could stir up a dance challenge is another big thing. I feel like also having very simple lyrics, having these thumping 808s. There's like this formula that will guarantee you maybe a TikTok hit, because another interesting fact too is that there is 2 times as many users actively every day on TikTok than there are on Spotify. So a lot of people are, discovering new artists and new sounds through TikTok. And it's like the most profitable lane right now for artists to blow up. So they're trying to gear their sound towards something that could blow up on TikTok.
And I don't think that's maybe the best thing for quality, because I was having this conversation with one of my boys, and I was like, the way people are releasing music now, it's really geared towards like that boom snap, like get that out there and like get those quick years on it, like kind of how on TikTok you get those challenges going. And what's genius about TikTok is that, well, I don't know if it's genius for the quality, but what's genius about the marketing behind it is that it's basically all It's all revolved around music recommendations. I mean, look at their sounds, look at all the trends that go viral. It's the whole platform is really centric around music, and it's really geared that way. I mean, the key algorithm points within the application are all based around discovering new music, going towards sounds, going into hashtags that have those sounds, and then doing those challenges. So do you think that artists are giving up their quality to be able to optimize songs for that?
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned the algorithm perspective of things, because even if you look at a platform like Spotify, you have to realize that the major marketing push for all these artists is to get on the hottest playlists that are followed by hundreds of thousands and in some cases millions of fans. And what's interesting about the Spotify algorithm is that they'll recommend songs to the user that are similar to the songs that are in that playlist. Even for, let's say, Rap Caviar, they'll maybe designate certain songs that fit the mold of these hit songs that are already existing on that playlist. So it's like artists are getting programmed in their heads like, okay, I got to make a song that sounds like Tootsie Slide, or I got to make a song that sounds like Montero because that's what's popping. That's what the algorithm is going to feed. That's kind of where I'm at with this. I feel like, again, artists are trying to fit in rather than stand out because that's more of a sure bet to success.
And I do agree with you. I think that now there has to be some sort of innovation, because I don't mind getting the music we are getting now. I mean, I've enjoyed a lot of these projects. I have gone through material, but we're not going to sit here and cap. You know, there has definitely been a decline in quality, especially that feeling. You know, when there's that first listening experience, you could definitely tell what's optimized for streams and trends and what's optimized for the user experience and an actual concept. So going back to Saba's Few Good Things, that's really a project that I'm amazed with, because there was a fantastic, tight-knit concept all throughout it. The track list was optimized. There was no filler within it, and it's charting. It's charting globally. It's doing really nice numbers right now, and Saba's independent. Whereas if, I'm not going to mention any names in particular, but there's a lot of trap albums that are coming out where, again, it feels like mini drop shipping websites where it's like, get your formula, get your algorithm, put it out to everywhere, do your marketing rollouts, and then get as much cash as you want.
I wouldn't say only trap albums. I think that's a particular subgenre where we're seeing a lot of formulaic releases, but in all of hip hop, there is a lot of that. But another interesting point that I want to ask you is that, do you feel like people are more critical, let's say, the music that's dropping just because of how much more we're exposed to? Because if you take it back to, let's say, 2002, there was more of a commitment that came with listening to music. You had to, get your ass to a store and actually physically buy a copy of an album. And I'll give you an example. If the Baby were to drop an album tomorrow, I would stream it. I would take the 30 minutes or 40 minutes of my time to listen to that album because it's easy access for me. But I'm not going to go to the store and spend my money and make that commitment to purchase that album, meaning that maybe I'm exposed to less and I'm kind of gravitating more towards artists that I'm familiar with. And I just feel like maybe we're at a point right now where we're exposed to so much, so we're experiencing a lot of the bad and also finding a lot of the good, because at the end of the day, people are listening to more music than they would have years ago. Right?
And I think that also it brings more of a competitive factor back then. There was more of that thing of like, to be able to have people, get out of their chairs and go and really consume the music, you had to impress them. You had to be able to do it. Now it's like, everything's from a click, right? So what is the real fear of missing out for music now? What's really going on? And I think that that's what it comes down to, the fear of missing out. You want to hear the hottest music, you'll get the hottest music. And when you feel like, okay, there's a trend or there's something around it, people are going to go stream it. But that's been music forever. So guys, let us know how you feel about this conversation in the comments section. It's always nice talking about this because, we are the people that are consuming this music. We are the general fans, and we are the ones that are really giving a gauge to it. So let me know how you guys feel in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching this. We're doing content on the regular, so if you did like this piece of content, please subscribe and hit the like button. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Thanks for watching the full video, and if you're new to NFR, be sure to hit that subscribe button, as we'll be keeping you guys updated with the latest album releases in terms of update videos, album reviews, and our own original series on the weekly. And we also have our Patreon plan available in the description below, where you can access weekly bonus content and also access to our Discord. So be sure to check out all of that, and we'll catch you in the next one.